Good morning. This has been noticed as the time and place for the Maryland Public Service Commission's weekly administrative meeting. It looks like I have some elbow room today. Let us begin with the approval of the minutes from last week's meeting. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved. Madam Secretary, can we move to the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There's two items on the consent agenda. The first item is the Eastern Utilities Commission filed on July 3, 2018, its designation of weather stations in compliance with COMAR 20.310305. And the second item is the Potomac Edison Company filed on July 11, 2018, designation of weather stations in compliance with COMAR section 20.310305.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For items number 1 and number 2, I move that we approve the weather station designations for the purpose of determining when there is an extreme weather period that requires restrictions on electricity service terminations under COMAR 20.31.03.03 and 20.31.03.04.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Madam Secretary, the administrative agenda.
The first item on the administrative agenda is Believe Wireless LLC, DBA Believe Broadband filed on January 4, 2018, application to provide facility-based and resold local exchange telecommunications services in Maryland.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. This is an application by Believe Wireless LLC doing business as Believe Broadband for authority to provide resold and facilities-based local exchange services. The company plans to provide services to business customers. It has fewer than 20,000 customers just starting their business in Maryland, and as such, they are not required to file a tariff. However, they have included in their application an affidavit stating that they will do so if they should exceed 20,000 customers in Maryland. Staff recommends that the Commission grant the company the authority to provide resold and facilities-based local exchange services and grant the company the requested COMAR waivers in Waiver Group C.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. Do the Commissioners have questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move we grant the company authority to provide resold and facilities-based local exchange telecommunications services in Maryland and grant the company the requested COMAR waivers in Waiver Group C.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. The next item, please.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Item number 4 is Utilitz LLC filed on May 15, 2018, an application for a license to supply electricity or electric generation services in Maryland.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Kenneth Albert on behalf of staff. This item addresses an application by Utiliz for authorization to operate as an electricity broker for all customer classes. Utiliz has significant experience in the energy industry. We checked with the 4 states in which they do operate, and there were no problems with complaints, and there had been no enforcement actions against the company. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission authorize Utiliz to operate as an electricity broker.
Mr. Albert, what are the 4 states that they currently operate in?
Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New Hampshire.
Thank you. Do the Commissioners have any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For item number 4, I would move that we grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland, limited to broker and aggregator services, for all customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff. That we direct the company to provide marketing and trading materials specific to its Maryland operations to the Commission staff and the Office of People's Counsel 30 days prior to utilization of the materials in Maryland, and direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in the application.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Thank you.
The last item on the administrative agenda is number 5, Potomac Electric Power Company filed on March 30, 2018, revised tariff pages. The company proposes changes to the general terms and conditions for furnishing electric service in Maryland.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff again. This is the further consideration of PEPCO's revised rates for installation of residential service connections. The revised tariff would change the current charge of $1,764 to $1,812 for single-family detached dwellings, and would change the current charge of $970 to $1,044 per unit for townhouses and multifamily dwellings. The Commission suspended the tariff an additional 30 days at its administrative meeting of June 6th with a request for further information. In staff's previous comments, staff noted that there was an overcollection of money starting January 1st, 2018 due to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. The Commission requested that PEPCO provide additional information related to returning the overcollected taxes and suspended the tariff an additional 30 days to provide that additional information. Specifically, the Commission sought information on the cost of returning overcollected taxes on these charges to individual customers. PEPCO states that it will cost $12.04 per unit, or $9,764.44 overall, to return the overcollected taxes from January through June 6th, which is considerably more than the overcollected amount of $2,165.19. As described in staff's comments, staff believes the cost of returning the funds to individual customers is probably not quite as high as PEPCO states, but we nonetheless agree that they're probably too high to warrant individual refunds. For that reason, staff has suggested returning the funds through the bill stabilization adjustment. Staff continues to recommend that the Commission accept the revised tariff pages for filing and direct the company to file clean tariff pages with an effective date of August 8, 2018. The Commission should also direct PEPCO to work with staff to develop metrics that both support and evaluate the variation between actual costs and estimated costs of service line extensions. Staff further recommends that the Commission direct PEPCO to allocate the overcollected taxes embedded within the service charge related to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act from January 1st, 2018 into the residential bill stabilization adjustment.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. Would you like to make an appearance?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. Matt Seegers appearing on behalf of PEPCO.
Thank you. Mr. Seegers, do you have anything to add based on Mr. Spivak's presentation?
Your Honor, I would just say that, well, first of all, I would like the Commission to know that PEPCO has no issues with staff's request that the PEPCO work with staff to develop metrics that support and evaluate the variation between actual costs and estimated costs. We have no issues with that request. Concerning the refund of the overcollection of the taxes, we are not in favor of returning that overcollection. As staff's buck sheet makes clear, the costs of doing so far outweigh the amount of any overcollection. In staff's buck sheet, it indicates that from January 1st of 2018, the estimated overcollection is $2,165.19. In order to return that amount to customers, it will cost over almost $9,800 to do so. And we just don't think that makes any sense at all. And moreover, where staff is trying to, or is it staff's recommendation to return it through the BSA, that we are also not in favor of that, because when this issue was first raised at the prior administrative meeting, the whole incentive was that it was to get this tax money back to the specific customers who may have paid it. And those are customers that may have bought houses from developers who had to pay for the service extension fee, had that cost built into the cost of their houses. If we flow this through the BSA, then this will apply to all customers. And the actual customers who paid this will get a very, very, very small portion of this. So we are not...
Can you enlighten me? What is the BSA and how does it work?
The bill stabilization adjustment is essentially, it's a mechanism whereby it acts as both, it basically stabilizes the amount of revenue that the utility gets. It essentially acts as a sort of a floor, but also a ceiling. And it's trued up every year. And essentially what, and it can be useful to reflect charges that need to be flowed through to all customers. But the problem with the BSA is that we don't have the ability to only flow through, for example, a refund like this we don't have the ability to target specific customers. It would affect all customers that are affected by the BSA.
What is your proposal in that case? We're only talking about $2,000 and change.
Our proposal is that we not be required to refund this. It's a very de minimis amount, and the cost of doing so would just far outweigh any benefit the customers would get.
Does staff have a response?
Well, I think Mr. Sagers has kind of put his finger on the dilemma that we faced in trying to work through this. The amount, as he noted, is fairly small. The cost of refunding it individually directly to the people who were affected by the charge, which, truth to tell, is actually usually the developers who build houses, would exceed the amount of the overcharge. So, but we're still left with, if we do nothing, the company gets a bit of a windfall. Not a huge windfall, but still a windfall. And we didn't find that solution very satisfactory either. So the bill stabilization adjustment is at least a way to flow it back to customers and to prevent the windfall. So I guess, in making this judgment, staff's opinion was we'd rather have it go to the ratepayers who may have been affected by this charge at some point.
Right, that those ratepayers would receive a small pro rata share of that.
Yes.
Mr. Segers, I would imagine you would disagree with the characterization of a windfall. Where should that $2,100 and change go?
Well, it's our proposal, Mr. Chairman, that should be that we retain that money, just because of the fact that the cost of returning it just would far outweigh any benefit. If the commission is inclined toward refunding that amount, it would be our proposal that that refund should be done by check to the specific customers who paid that fee, instead of flowing it through the BSA for the reasons that I specified before.
Is there any other place that those funds could go to offset the collection, the $2,100, aside from a BSA or a return by check to those affected customers?
Those are the only two methods that I know are, that those essentially are our two options.
As far as it goes, I mean, the other thing that's going through staff's thinking here is that the commission has been fairly consistent, and actually completely consistent, in ordering that the Tax Cut and Job Act monies be refunded to customers, that they not sit in the utilities' hands. So that's what we were trying to do. I mean, there's an order issued in February that pretty much required that of all the companies, and so that's, again, why we were making that recommendation.
Mr. Spivak, are there any other avenues for the company to make a refund or return of the $2,100 aside from the BSA? Mr. Segers is saying there's not.
Not for making a return, unless unless there was some kind of true-up, maybe in next year's rates. But I don't know how that would work. It would be very difficult to do.
Commissioner Herman.
Mr. Segers, is there any charge to the company to run it through the BSA?
Essentially, it would be the same cost, because this would have to be done through our special billing department. This is not like for example, Mr. Spivak raised the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That was a rate reduction, which did not have to go through our special billing department. A refund like this would...
Not a refund. If you just run it through the BSA, you take the $2,100 and you mix it in with the rest of the BSA. Why is there an extra charge for that?
No, if you run through the BSA, I don't believe that there will be a charge. But again, our position is that if we did that, then the customers who actually paid this really would not be getting anything back.
Sure, I get that. They might get a half a cent, but the company doesn't get an extra $2,100 either. So it doesn't cost anything, and at least, it's not, while I'm not sure I'd go all the way to a windfall, $2,100 in the grand scheme of things, which I understand is a lot of money, but, with a company like Pepco, it's more like a puff of wind versus a windfall. But I think that that doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that the company should retain, and I understand the dilemma. But I was fairly certain that there was no cost associated with running it through the BSA. Mr. Seeger, do you know what that overcharge is now, given that we had July and August very heavy usage months? Have we gone up in that 2,100 number?
Unfortunately, I don't know what that is. I can get that information for the commission if you'd like.
Mm-hmm. So if the commission were to order it to run through the BSA, it would, Pepco would then be more than $2,100. It would be whatever it is as of the date of the commission's order. Is that correct?
That is correct, I believe.
Okay. So I understand the dilemma, and I fully, don't want customers to pay more in order to do this. But I also think that, for purposes of trying to maintain integrity, that we, even though it's a small amount, the BSA is at least an option. And if the company has no other option, I'm thinking that's, that is an option. So thank you, staff, for thinking of that. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Just wanted to ask a couple of questions about the alternate option of mailing checks to the customers that made the payment. Has the company, Mr. Seegers, has the company tried to analyze how much that would cost to do that, to determine who those customers were, print out checks, mail them, all of that?
We do have that amount, Your Honor. That is the, including the, and staff included that amount in their buck sheet. Essentially for everything, it would be that $9,800 figure. But we do know who those customers are, and we are able to identify them.
So they're still customers of record for the company?
Yes. The reason that we can't do something like a bill credit is because they are not the customers who originally paid the old service connection fee. So
Right.
that was the developers who they bought their house from.
Right.
So, but yes, we can identify those specific customers.
So you can identify the residential customers who have purchased the homes, but not necessarily the corporations that were created to build the houses themselves and pay the initial service fee.
Well, I believe that we can identify the developers who built the homes, but what the issue is that when the developers, when they sold the homes to their residential customers, I believe it was Commissioner O'Donnell at the prior hearing, his belief, and probably rightly so, was the developers, they built the cost of having to pay the service connection fee into the price of the house that these customers that they bought from them. So it was that was the intent, was to get this money back to those specific customers. And our position is that if you do this through the BSA, it is not going to, it's not, those customers will not really see any benefit.
Okay.
Mr.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, Commissioner Linton. Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wondered if OPC is here, if they had any comments on this issue. Apparently not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Baker, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Benjamin Baker on behalf of staff. Just to follow up on one other question that came up, Matt did bring up the bill credit was another option that that you could consider, and the other could be a deferral to a further rate case. But once again, you still have the issue of those customers. Identifying the specific customer that would go back to just gets harder as more time passes. And on top of that, then you also have to deal with the regulatory lag effect and the accrual of the accrual that will occur on those numbers over time, in terms of they'll grow in terms of the amount of money that would go back to customers. I don't think the company would be in favor of that either, though we could ask them.
Thank you. In light of the fact that there's not a lot of options here, with the exception of the BSA, and I think it would be an inappropriate result if the utility retained the funds, I don't see any other option but to approve the BSA mechanism in this case, for the funds to flow to. Do my commissioners have additional questions or thoughts?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually agree. I think that there really aren't a lot of other options here. It wouldn't make sense to spend $9,000 plus to return $2,000. And the BSA does have it will provide a benefit to those individual consumers that did pay it initially. They're not getting penny for penny, or I guess dollar for dollar in this case, but they are getting something back. And the BSA will have an impact on those customers and others as well. So for this small amount, that's the best option.
I agree as well. You know, it is not an elegant solution, but it is the only solution that has been proposed here. I will say that I think there might have been some alternative solutions. For example, a charitable contribution to that amount to the fuel fund or something else like that. But that has not been proposed to us, and therefore it is not before us. And while I agree that this amount is de minimis, I don't know where we ever draw the line on de minimis and not de minimis. And is $10,000 de minimis or $100,000 de minimis? It's really maintaining the integrity of the rulings with respect to the tax act. And so therefore, with the only thing before us with the BSA that has no additional cost, and at least prevents the company from retaining, albeit a small amount, but retention. So I would also accept the staff's solution with no other one in mind.
Thank you. Seeing no other proposals on the table, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the tariff revisions for filing, direct the company to file clean copies of the revised tariff pages with an effective date of August 8th, 2018, direct the company to work with staff to develop metrics that both support and evaluate the variation between actual costs and estimated costs, and direct the company to allocate the over-collected taxes embedded with the service charge related to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 from January 1st, 2018 into the residential bill stabilization adjustment.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and is approved. Seeing no additional business before the commission today, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioners.